What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Good Wolf Project. I'm your host, Jerry Scarlato. Today, I want to talk to you about learning to unlearn what society, your parents, your coaches has taught you so that you can gain maximal results in your life. This idea is something that is very rarely talked about, which is why I think it's so important to bring up, understand, and to get into your mind. What we'll talk about today will be very high level because this is an in-depth idea that challenges much of what society has taught us we need to do in order to get better. We're always thinking about learning and growing by adding and doing, which of course you have to add and do and change and adapt in order for yourself to learn and grow and get different results and get more out of your life and achieve the things that you want. All of that is 100% true. And yet, the analogy that I like to use is a sports car. If you get into a sports car with 1,000 horsepower and you put your foot on the brake and you put your foot on the gas, the car will go nowhere. Wheels will spin, it'll make a lot of noise, but it's not going to do anything. If you let your foot off the brake just a little bit, it'll start to move forward, but still, you're not going to get the full potential of the car until you let the brake loose from the car. If your foot's on the gas and there's no foot on the brake, then the car will go. The potential of the car will be released. And the same could be said for you. You have learned a lot of things throughout your life, no matter how old you are. If you're listening to this, you're at least in your teens, so you're plenty old enough to have been influenced by everybody around you in some way, shape, or form. So no matter how old you are, you have learned a lot of things in your life. You've gained a lot of habits. You've gained a lot of beliefs. You have gained a lot of things about how the world works and what you're capable of, and so on and so forth, all of which has been taught to you. Now, granted, depending on how much you've paid attention and how conscious you've been throughout your life, a lot of it you learn on your own and you gain through experience and you gain through doing things. But today's society is so coddled that we don't really get that a lot. We're too busy trying to protect ourselves so we don't go experience things and we don't go challenge ourselves and we don't push ourselves to our limits, that we don't gain as much through experience, and we maybe rely on these other things to help us learn and grow. We need the other things. We need the books. I'm a big fan of reading books. We need the podcasts. I'm a big fan of that. I have one. We also need experience, and we also need to know what roadblocks we're going to run into. And the biggest roadblock is always you. Remember that the goal is to not fool yourself, and you're the easiest one to fool. And one way to start to undo that is to start to unlearn the things that you have been taught, the things that have been ingrained in you, the things that have been pushed on you by the people around you. Some of them who love you a lot, and they're just trying to, quote unquote, look out for your best, is what parents would say. I just want what's best for you. What they're really saying when they say that is they want what's best through their lens. They're looking through a window, and unless they're aware of it, they're looking through only their window, and they're going, hey, there's my son or daughter over there, and I want what's best for them. So I'm going to tell them through this window. I'm not going to look through their window. I'm not going to look through another window. I'm not going to give them the option of other windows. I'm going to give them the option of my window. And while it may be a good option, it may also be a terrible option. So being able to unlearn those things, being able to see those things for what they really are, as opinions and only one way to do things in a million potential different ways, is imperative in order to actually, number one, live a fulfilled life. Because if you're doing a bunch of shit just because people taught you to do it, and because people taught you what to believe, and because people taught you on how to think, if you're doing a bunch of shit like that, you will not be happy. If you're not doing things based on your beliefs, through your experience, through what you have learned, it's just there's always going to be a gap. And then comes the results part. You want results. There's not one way to do things. There's not two ways. There's not 5 ways. There's not 10 ways. There's not 100 ways. There's typically thousands of ways to do things. Not that you need thousands of options for sure, but being able to open your mind so that you can think about more options is important. And that comes when you take off the brakes of this, of your brain, of the thing that's in your head that is slowing you down. So it starts with understanding that who you are today is simply the habit of who you are. Let me repeat that in a different way. The way that you view the world is just the window that you have looked through so far. Your window may be very narrow, or it may be very broad, maybe big. No matter what size it is just the window you have viewed it through. There's 7 billion people on this world, so that means there's at least 7 billion windows to view through. So starting with that understanding that that who you are is not who you are, which so many people identify as, well, this is just who I am. This is just the way that I think. This is just the way that blah, 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 I've been told that I am. No, not true. It is only currently your habit of being. So if it is only currently your habit of being, that means you can change the way that you are. You can change the way that you think. You can undo some things. You can unlearn some things, and you can replace those things, beliefs, ideas, values with different and new ones that empower you and lead you to a better path of fulfillment, happiness, achievement, any other thing that you're trying to accomplish in your life. That's what we're talking about. So who are the people, or what? There are 3 categories, I'll say, 3 areas of 3 groups of people. I don't know why I'm having trouble spitting this out right now. There are 3 groups and areas that influence us in the way that we think, that teach us how to think, or try to persuade us on how to think, or try to influence us on how to think, sometimes purposely, sometimes not. Number 1 is your parents and family. Number 2 is your schooling, and I'll go ahead and plug sports into that, basically your teachers and your coaches. Number 3 is society / friends. We'll go ahead and lump all of those into one category. So when it comes to your parents and your family, that shit starts early. And again, this isn't stuff we even think about. But when you think about how you raise a child, especially in today's day and age where we're trying to protect everything and everybody, and we don't realize how robust a human being is and how strong a human being really is if you just let them be, and how much they can figure shit out, and how much kids are smarter than adults in a lot of ways. But parents, through the protection of their kids and wanting what's best for them, protect them. And they say, hey, don't do that. Don't touch that. That's going to hurt you. Don't move that way. Stay away from this. Stay away from that. Stay away from this person. And they basically just very early start ingraining in you what you can't do and what you shouldn't touch and what you shouldn't go toward and who you should stay away from and the types of situations that you should not be part of and the beliefs that you should have. Like if you grow up in an environment where most of the food that you eat is out of a box, you just think that that's the way that you eat. Like that's just what's ingrained in you. And if everybody around you is fat, you think that, well, everybody around me is fat, so I'm just going to be fat. That's the way that it is. It is just ingrained in you. And all that stuff starts super early. Our parents, again, they're looking out for our best interest, quote unquote. And yet, many times, parents are the downfalls of children, not because it's malevolent, only because they're not looking outside of their window. So recognizing that you as a human being, no matter who you are, I don't give a fuck who you are, no matter who you are, you as a human being have those things ingrained in you from childhood. Recognizing that is important because it's keeping you from doing something. You've been taught that something is not safe. Investing is another perfect example. Parents will teach their kids how risky investing is. Stay away from real estate. Stay away from the stock market. Stay away from crypto now. Stay away from whatever because it's very risky and you shouldn't do it. It's not risky. It's just that they didn't take the time to figure it out. That's all. That's the only thing. There's a reason why the richest people in the world all invest in one of those things. There's a reason. And there's a reason why the vast majority of people, the bell curve, if you will, don't do it wisely. And it's only because they don't take the time to figure the shit out. So thinking about those types of things and how you've been influenced by your parents from an early age is important. Number two, of course, is our schooling and our sports, our teachers, and our coaches. Same sort of thing. Our teachers are more, depending on if you're talking about middle school, high school, college, as you get further up, it becomes more ideological. And when it becomes ideological, like this is the way the world works, but they're not giving you an opportunity to think for yourself, that kind of shit I push back against super hard. And it's stuff that is very hard to outgrow because in college, people are very influential. Like we are like sponges in college and we're trying to learn. And unless you're the type of person like me, who most people don't like, the type of person that pushes back real hard, like teachers did not like me, coaches did not like me because I pushed. Why is it like that? Why should I do that? Why should I think that way? There aren't many people like that in high school and in college, like in that age range, who do that. And everybody outside of that is very like you look at adults and you're like, yeah, adults know what they're talking about. They got their shit together. They're teaching me. I'm learning. They're telling me the way things are. Why should I think any differently? Like all of these things. So if you go to college and you're taught these ideologies about the way things are, but they're not giving you the opportunity to think for yourself, not teaching you how to think for yourself, not teaching you about the way to experiment in the world. They're telling you this is the way that it is. That's not an effective way to set somebody up for the future because it's very rarely this is the way that it is. This and only this and this is the way that it is. And when it comes to ideology, and this is me stepping on my soapbox, ideology is not very useful. Ideology is good in idea, but not in practice most of the time. So when you're thinking about how you've been influenced by teachers and coaches and the decisions that you make in your own life and the things that you believe in your own life, because of that, it's worth thinking about how those things actually work in the real world. And looking around and going, I've been making a decision this way and I've been thinking about things this way, but I look around and there are definitely a lot of things that go contrary to that where people are achieving at a high level or doing things much differently and much better. So maybe I'm not thinking about things correctly. That's super important. And that's especially when it comes to teachers, schooling, and especially in your later years, being able to break through those ideologies and being able to think for yourself is super important. Now, coaches do things in a different way. They're not teaching you ideology per se, but in sports, coaches teach you about who you are, or they tell you about who you are. They tell you that, oh, you're this type of person. You're Johnny Hustle. Oh, you're just the one who works hard. Oh, you're the one that just doesn't fall in line. Like again, I was very athletic. Luckily, I was blessed to be athletic. So that was an easy side for me, if you will. But I was also stubborn and hard-headed, and they reinforced that. So I continued to be stubborn and hard-headed because of that. Not very useful sometimes, useful in other areas. Nonetheless, coaches tell you who you are, and then they treat you as such. Like if you're not, and this is going down another rabbit hole, but if you're not very athletic and they feel like you're not going to be very good, a lot of coaches won't put that much effort into you, which sucks. Kind of sucks because you could just be a late bloomer and need a little more time, and that's just the way that it is. But if they teach you early on that, you're just not very good and you just need to stop and quit and move on to something else, then you're going to believe that and you're going to potentially move on to something else, and maybe that carries forward into other areas of your life. The last one, of course, is society, and society is a super hard one to overcome. I think a lot of people can you can kind of overcome parents, you can kind of overcome the things that coaches and schools have taught you, but human beings are tribal beings. We like to be in groups. We like to feel like we're part of something, and we like to feel like we're accepted by those around us. So when it comes to the things that society believes as a group, most people tend to fall into that category of things that society believes as a group. And because of that, they will start to believe or do things that may not actually align with their own values and who they are and what they want from the world. So you have this gap about who you are, like what you actually want to achieve, but you're following along with these rules that society gives you, and you can't figure out what's going on. But it's simply because you're following along with the rules because you want to feel like you're part of the group and you want to be accepted by the group, that you're not making more progress. Whereas if you let go of those rules, you let go of those beliefs, you let go of those ideas that society's pushing on you and telling you, and you move in a different direction, there's a very good chance that you'll feel much different about yourself. So that one's a harder one to overcome because we just, as human beings, evolutionarily, want to be accepted. We want to be part of the group. We want to be in the in crowd. So unless you cultivate the ability to feel rejected and be okay with being rejected and be okay with having just a smaller group of people that you are accepted by and not feeling like you have to wear the clothes that everyone wears and, look at your phone like everyone does and scroll like everyone does and, say the dumb phrases that everyone says and believe the things that everyone does and talk about the nonsense and all the people like that's a perfect example. Like most people complain and talk about other people and maybe talk about the news or the newest sitcom. That's what most people talk about, those things. They either complain, talk about other people, or talk about the newest thing on TV / TikTok / Instagram. You can lump all those in one. And so we do that. And sometimes maybe you feel icky about it after the fact. You're like, I don't know, that didn't feel very good. There's a reason it didn't feel good because your values don't align with that shit. So then don't do it. You don't have to do it just because everyone else does it. But that's a perfect example of how we're taught that you complain about shit, you talk about other people, and you waste your time on media and then talk about that. None of that is ever talking about your life and how to make it better. So why are you questioning why you're not getting better if you're never talking about it and you're never surrounding yourself with people who are also doing the same thing? So those are the areas in which we are pushed and taught and influenced to learn a certain thing, to learn to be a certain way. And now we have to start to unlearn that, which is a hard process. If you are my age, I'm 40 years old, which supposedly is about halfway through my life, but I'm going to live to be 116, so I'm really only about a third of the way through my life. So if you're like me and you're a third of the way through your life, that's a pretty significant amount of pushback and influence and so on and so forth. If you're 20, of course, 20-year-olds believe they know everything, especially 20-year-old males believe they know everything. But if you're 20, again, you've had a decent amount of time in order for the world to teach you things. So at any time throughout your life, you can start to question the way things are. You can start to question why you think the things that you think. And you can start to change the way you are. You are not who you are. You are only currently your habit of being, your habit of thinking, your habit of doing, and you can change all of it. It takes time, takes effort, takes consistency. You have to do it every day. Sometimes it's moment to moment. It's always hard. It's always challenging. It always will be there. So you just have to keep going and you just have to keep showing up. So how do you start to do that? Well, there's 3 basic steps that you can do to start to unlearn the things that you have learned so that you can then learn different things, take the brakes off of yourself, and start actually being you instead of being everybody else. Number 1, awareness. Number 2, ask questions. Number 3, take action. We can make it AAA. Awareness. No, we can't. Yeah, we can. Awareness, ask, action. Awareness, ask, action. Okay? Number one is awareness. Unless you make the unconscious conscious, it'll dictate your life and you will call it fate. That's what you've done up until this point. But at this point, you are not doing that anymore. We are now building awareness on how we have been influenced by those in the past so that we can make different decisions today, so we can have different outcomes in the future. That's what we're going to start doing. In order to start doing that, you just have to pay attention to the things that you're doing. When you go to make a decision, you look and you go and you make a decision. And if it seems like a decision that is going against moving you forward, ask yourself, why am I making this decision? Look at it and just be aware. Just pay attention to what you're doing. For God's sake, just pay the fuck attention. Put your phone down. Take the earplugs out of your ears. Just pay attention to what's going on in your damn head. Do that. And that will build awareness around you, who you are, what you believe, why you believe it, and so on. Number two is ask. Ask questions. Once you have figured out the things that are getting in your way, the beliefs that you currently have, why you're doing things the way you're doing, and you're building awareness around that, you can ask other questions. You can ask questions like, is this true? If you have a belief like investing is risky, you can ask the question, is this true? And you can look and you can think for yourself. And you can go, okay, so really risk is relative to a number of things, but a lot of it is relative to the knowledge base that you have, to the understanding that you have of how a thing works. So if I throw money at the stock market and I know nothing about it and I'm trying to play the stocks, it is risky. However, if I understand that there are some stocks that are less risky than others, that are more stable over time, there are others like technology stocks that are more risky. And there are things like indexes that are less risky. If I understand that, then I can go, okay, it's not as risky. Or it can be risky, but I know that if I if I buy this technology stock, it's going to be more risky than if I buy Walmart. And if you understand that, then it becomes less risky. So asking questions, is this true? Is this belief even useful? Is it actually moving me in any direction, or is it just stopping me from doing things? And again, why do I even have this belief? Where did it come from? I believe understanding where these things came from is important so that you can kind of go, oh, well, that's interesting. Well, maybe then you have stacked on other feelings and emotions because of that, so that you can start to pull those things off and again, start to take the brakes off. All right, and the last one, of course, is take action. Nothing happens without taking action. Once you have built awareness around your thoughts, the things that you're doing, once you've started to ask questions, now it is time to do something different. So, a bunch of things you can do here. Most people don't have the willpower and the discipline yet to just start changing things, start changing the way that you think. If you can and you do, like, go ahead and do that. You can build that. Like, you can just start changing things, and over time, you can become the type of person who is, easily disciplined and has the willpower and can just keep pushing forward and keep going. So you can do that. You can also create these things over time called implementation intentions. It's basically an if-then statement. So whenever you come up against a belief that is not moving you forward, you can say, well, if I run into this scenario, then I will do this. So if I run into, if I'm talking about investing or if I'm thinking about investing and I'm not sure, then I will either go to this person and I will ask their opinion, or I will go to this site and I will look for this information so that I can better understand what I'm going to do, or I can better understand how risky this is, or I can better understand, the options that I have. When you start to build those things in, these if this happens, then I will do that, then you have a guide basically to take you in a different direction instead of just running away. Because if you don't have a guide, if you don't have a new decision to make, you're always going to default back to what you usually do. You start to talk about investing, you think about investing in the stock market or real estate, and you go to take the action, then you will run back to your typical behavior, and that is typically not taking the action. But if you have a next step to do, then you will take the next step. Also, a great idea is just keeping a journal of all of the scenarios that you run into. You can do that, of course, on your phone, or you can do analog like I like to do. Just write them down. Here's the scenario that I ran into. Here's the thing that I felt, or here's the decision that I made and it turned out to not be the way that I wanted it to be. And then you can plug through those more effectively, ask why it didn't turn out the way that you wanted it to, ask where it came from, and you can start to think about things again, pull those things apart so that you can unlearn those old habits and old beliefs and old ways of thinking that have been ingrained in you, usually again by other people and society and things around you. So this is a big area to work on. It's frustrating. It's lifelong because you are surrounded by people. So unless you seclude yourself and cut yourself off from the world, there's always going to be external influence. Starting to take the brakes off that have been given to you will then allow you to make different decisions moving forward. That's what we want to do, is make the decision today, start doing something today so that we can be that person down the road. Remember, your actions are always a lagging indicator of your results. Meaning, if you're getting results today, the hard thing to understand is the actions that you took yesterday, last week, last month, even last year, and sometimes before that, are the reason why you're getting the results today. That's why it's important to start today, because it's going to take time for you to start to get results. But if you plan on being alive, if you plan on continuing to be on this earth, and you plan on continuing to live for some period of time, you might as well do it in a purposeful way. You might as well unlearn this shit that people have taught to you so that you can learn the things that are useful to you that can move you forward. That's what we want. That's what life is about. Building a life. It is making life happen for you instead of letting life happen to you. That's what we're looking for. So, appreciate you guys listening to me babble. Make sure that you share this with anybody who you feel like is like stuck in a way or stuck in a place where they just keep running into a wall because they're doing the same thing over and over again. They're not recognizing that they're, potentially just following through on a belief or a habit that they are not seeing and realizing, so that they can unlearn it too. And then you're helping somebody, which is always super beneficial. You're getting and creating that ripple effect, which is what we're looking for in life. So thanks again for listening to me babble, and until next time.